Hey, Steve Mignani here at Burniston Auto Wrecking in Burniston, Mass, doing the junkyard crawl with a 1984 Chrysler Lazer XE. Now you might remember 1984 was the first year for the Lazer and its Dodge brother, the Daytona. Now you got to remember too that the early 80s was when Chrysler was committing itself to front-wheel drive K-car platforms, and the Lazer essentially was Chrysler's version of the Daytona. But how would Chrysler differentiate itself from the Daytona? Well, they focused on high tech, and the Lazer XE included a bunch of high tech. Now here's the thing, the base price on the XE was $1,898 more than the base Lazer, but for that you got that high tech, which we'll get into in a second. But here's the punchline. For $10,546, this car right here, without the turbo engine, was a full $772 more than an '84 Mustang GT 5-liter hatchback. What would you have taken? Well, the crazy thing is, in total, 25,882 people selected the Lazer XE. Now here's the thing, most of these had this two-tone paint, and again we see the Lazer name here, all done with graphics and tape, but befitting the high-tech nature of the XE, they all had electronic fuel injection logos right there in bright red, so you couldn't miss it. Now again, 1984 was the first year for the Lazer and its Daytona cousin, and also the first year that Chrysler went with fuel injection instead of a two-barrel on the 2.2 four-banger. So they were bragging loud and proud about electronic fuel injection, which was a big deal in 1984 as Detroit moved from carburetors into the world of fuel injection for fuel economy and emissions reasons and power. Let's see if it's still here. And there it is, the mighty Trans 4 2.2 liter. Now again, for 1984, this went to 99 horsepower thanks to that throttle body. In 83, this would have had 94 horsepower with a two-barrel carburetor. Again, 5 horsepower thanks to the electronic fuel injection. Now for $872 more, you could get the turbo 2.2, which would bring this thing up to 146 horsepower, about a 50% improvement. But with that said, here it is, man, the basic XE engine. Of course, same engine used in the base Lazer and the Dodge Daytona. Air conditioning here probably sapped a good 8 horsepower from that 99 horsepower. But again, this is how things were. And this whole front structure right here is basically the same as you'd find under a Dodge Aries or a Plymouth Reliant K car. In fact, the minivan was also new for 1984. Big year for Chrysler, 1984. And the minivan used similar bones up front. That same engine and a lot of the same suspension parts. Kind of weird. Now this, of course, is a hatchback, the only version. The Lazer was only sold as a 2-door hatch. There were no convertibles, no 4-doors. Same with the Daytona. It was strictly a personal specialty car, if you will. Let's open a door, and if you look inside of this thing, you'll see the XE came standard with that digital dashboard. It was extra cost in the lesser standard Lazer, but look at the staircase tachometer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and all those gauges, and it says Chrysler Electronics to the top left, and they were bragging about their high-tech nature. Look at the center stack, and there's the systems check, and up top the elapsed time chronometer, in other words, a stopwatch. And let me come around to the other side. And again, the seat on the XE on the driver's side had this air bladder for lumbar support, this little puppy right here. So you could make like a chiropractor and pump up the thing and fill it and whatnot, but that's standard equipment lumbar support on this thing. And here's the thing, in 1984, this is Auto Test right here. This is the review of the new car. So that's a Dodge Daytona right there, but notice the 4-lug wheels, same thing here. 1984, only 4-lug wheels. 85, they went to 5-lug wheels. So again, kind of a weird thing. 84 was a year of initials, if you will, but here it is right here. This is the review of the Chrysler Lazer Turbo with all the pricing and stuff, and their comments on it were, standard equipment on XE models included an electronic digital dashboard, but it can be deleted for the regular instruments, which our test car had. The model we had was a pre-production prototype Lazer that had seen some hard miles before we got to it. Again, press cars quite often bounce around, Motor Trend, Car Life, Car and Driver, and sometimes they're not so fresh when you get them. But here's right here, we're going to talk about this in a second. There's an annoying voice alert, but it can be easily turned off by a switch in the glove box. With the graphics, with the voice stilled, you still get the same warnings with chimes and graphic displays. What are we talking about that? Well, you remember those cars from the 80s, the door is ajar, etc. It was no joke. Here is the owner's manual to this car right here, and in here it describes that very item. And here it is right here. Electronic voice alert if so equipped. It says here, a verbal message is delivered through the radio speaker nearest the driver whenever an abnormal condition is detected. Before the message is given, the system first interrupts the radio, if it is playing, and sounds 3 short tones to get the driver's attention. It says here, please fasten your seatbelt, and it says all monitored systems are functioning, and there's even more. I mean, it wasn't just one message. It would say all these things. There it is. A door is ajar, your parking brake is on, your washer fluid is low, your fuel is low, your engine oil pressure is low, prompt service is required, your engine is overheating, prompt service. It reminds you of Tokyo Rose, you know, where is your wife tonight, Joel? Anyway, with that said, that was very real. But here's the deal. You could actually delete that. It says right here, if you so desire, the volume on the voice alert can be adjusted by your dealer. Also, it is possible to mute the system through the use of a switch located near the upper corner of the glove compartment. Pull the switch to the rear of the vehicle. So, inside of here is a switch. We can't show you, it's buried in there, but you pull the switch to the back and it mutes the annoying voice. Now, Chrysler had that feature, as did a lot of other car makers. I think the 300ZX even had a voice tone. It was considered high-tech back in the 1980s to have a voice that talked to you. Some cars may still have it, I don't know, but it was considered kind of cool. But if you ask me, it's kind of like HAL, the computer from 2001 Space Odyssey. I don't want to hear the car talk at me. But with all that said, it is interesting here, some sort of hidden details on this thing. If you look down here, the fascia cover here is removed, but in here, a message to service people. If equipped with automatic transmission, gear shift indicator must be disconnected through the right side access panel before removing console. So that's not something you or I would see, but if this thing came in for service and a guy was pulling this thing apart, he'd have to see that. Otherwise, you might do some harm to the cable. Kind of weird. But other things about the XE that are kind of bizarre are the rear seats are buckets, and they kind of match the front seats, but even weirder are visors, sun visors up here, for the rear seat passengers. You see them right here. And look at this. If the sun's in your eyes, I've never seen this on a car before, but kind of weird. Sun visors for the back seat passengers. Again, that's something you found on the Lazer XE. Perhaps optional on the standard Lazer, but again, just over 10,000 bucks. And again, 700 bucks more than a Mustang GT hatchback. You know, the Lazer was not an inexpensive car. So Chrysler, again, they must have made a lot of profit on these things because the bones of the K car were amortized many times over. You gotta remember too, 1980 was when Chrysler got that $1.4 billion loan, the bailout from Uncle Sam. And by 1984, they were well on their way to repaying. In fact, Uncle Sam got a $500 million profit out of that deal. And cars like this and the profits they generated were a big part of how Chrysler pulled out of the hole. And if you love Mopars today, you can thank cars like this, 1984 Lazer XE, for continuing Chrysler's ascension to the top. Of course, now you have Stellantis in Dodge, the electric Charger Banshee, the Hornet. These are things that we'll see how the future holds out. Now, the electric thing's kind of coming. I dare say that we'll see gas and electric as we get into 2030, etc. And we've heard this before. The Hemi program, it may not really be dead. Hold your breath, literally, on that one, because the Hemi ain't gone. But we'll just leave it at that for now. But back in '84, this is about as cool as things got. No Vipers, no Hellcats, no Hemis, no nothing. Front-wheel drive Lazers and Daytonas like this. But again, without these cars, we wouldn't have the Hellcats we love today. So that's the story of this front-wheel drive Dodge quasi-sports car, or Chrysler quasi-sports car. And if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up and come back tomorrow for even more junkyard calls here at Berniston Auto Wrecking.